conversation. The Nigel Farage Show.
Last Sunday, we witnessed the most extraordinary scenes in Barcelona and across other parts of Catalonia. The government was going ahead, the regional government was going ahead with a referendum that had not been cleared nationally in Spain and had been declared illegal. And what the Spanish government decided to do was to use virtually every means available to them to prevent the vote from taking place at all. Would perhaps have been rather cleverer to say, you push ahead with your vote and we'll just call it invalid afterwards. But no, about 10,000 police turned up, and as it finished up with 900 people being injured, many of them hospitalised, as women were dragged by their hair from polling stations, old people beaten over the head with batons as the police tried to clear the stations, tried to stop people from voting. It really difficult to believe this was happening in what is supposed to be a modern Western democracy. Even more astonishing was that the European Union, who love to interfere in the affairs of every member state, whether it's criticising the Polish government for judicial appointments, condemning the Hungarians for not taking migrant quotas after Mrs. Merkel let rather a lot of people in, or whether it's almost anything Britain does, you know, they're very quick to criticise, and they always say, the Union, they're about human rights, they're about the dignity of the individual, and yet, they, in the case of the Spanish treatment of people trying to vote in a referendum in Catalonia, ultimately they said that they thought necessary force had been used. And I was really, really angry about this. This is what I said to them in the European Parliament last Tuesday.
Mr. Juncker comes here for his one appearance in the Strasbourg session this week, and there is absolutely no mention made of the dramatic events that have taken place inside a European Union member state that is allegedly a modern democracy. Now, one of the reasons that I always wanted Brexit was because I thought the system of lawmaking, whereby the Commission has the sole right to initiate legislation, was something that would in fact damage and in the end destroy any concept of national democracy. And yeah, I've called the European Union undemocratic, I've called it anti-democratic, but never, ever, in my fiercest criticisms here, did I think we would see the police of a member state of the Union injuring 900 people in an attempt to stop them going out to vote. Whether or not it was legal nationally for people in Catalonia to have a vote, surely people are allowed to express an opinion. We saw women being dragged out of polling stations by their hair, old ladies with gashes in their forehead. The most extraordinary display. And what do we get from Mr. Juncker today? Not a dicky bird.
Well, that was how I felt about it. And following on from not a dicky bird, his number two, Frans Timmermans, as I say, the next day said that sometimes you have to use necessary force. My view is that Catalan separatism has always been in a minority, but has been growing over the course of the last few years. And my view is the way the Spanish government have behaved and the way the EU has behaved, I think it will drive more people towards wanting separation for Catalonia. That's my view. You can disagree with it. You can agree with it by calling 0345 60 60 973. You can text to 84850. You can tweet on @LBC using the hashtag Farage and LBC. You can watch us on Facebook and comment there too. And particularly if you're in Spain, any part of Spain, keen to hear what you've got to say. Now, LBC's political editor Theo Usherwood is now in Barcelona, where it's just after midday, of course, and he's amongst a march that is going on now. Theo, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Nigel. I'm on a march for unity. This has been organised by the People's Party, President Rajoy's party, to try and persuade Catalonia to remain part of Spain. There are chants for the Catalan president, Carlos Puigdemont, to go to jail. There are calls for Spain to be united, that it's stronger and it will never be defeated as long as Catalonia remains. And I'm joined by a number of activists who are here trying to persuade Catalonia to remain part of Spain. Madam, why are you here?
I'm here because we want to show the international community that you have only seen one part of our and we want to see.
Yeah, we'll have to come back to that. It all sounded very noisy and very dramatic when the line went. But the point the lady was making is, of course, a very good point when she says you've only seen one side of the story. And I think, you know, that is true, that what we saw was the story of those that want Catalonia to separate and the way they were treated by the police. And I guess what we were about to hear at a march where people are saying, no, we want Spain to stay together, is that has always been the majority view. In fact, if you go back 10 or 15 years, the number of people who supported Catalonian separation was below 20%. Now, it has been building over the course of the last few years, and Catalonia, of course, remember, is the richest part of Spain. But, and here's the interesting thing, the European Union also said to them that if Catalonia wants to go ahead and separate from the rest of Spain, they wouldn't be allowed to join the European Union. The banks have been telling them that they would all leave. So a huge amount of pressure is being put on from the establishment to stop this from happening. And yet, when the Catalonian Parliament meets on Tuesday, it is possible that their First Minister, Mr. Puigdemont, it's possible that he will simply declare independence. Now, if he does that, how will the Spanish government react? We heard stories in the week that there were 16,000 Spanish soldiers on 3 cruisers moored off Barcelona and that they would come in and take over the government. So you can see there is the potential here for something really very nasty to happen. Andrew is calling me from Halifax. Andrew, good morning.
Good morning, Nigel. Great to finally speak to you.
Good morning. So what's your part of this story, Andrew?
Well, I'm like you on most things. I mean, I detest the European Union. I hope that it disintegrates within the next decade. But
Yep.
I cannot support the dismemberment of Spain.
Right.
I'm against this push for all sorts of reasons. One is that states do have the right to secede if there is a history of tyranny or a denial of fundamental human rights, such as the case in Kosovo or East Timor. But that's palpably not the case with Spain. The Spanish government has bent over backwards.
Oh, hang on, Andrew. Andrew, hang on. Whoa, down there. Last Sunday, the Spanish government had 10,000 police physically dragging people out of queues who wanted to go and vote. That was a denial of human rights, wasn't it?
Well, let me put it to you like this. If people did defy less confrontational tactics, and that is what it takes to uphold the rule of law, is it disproportionate? Because if it is, you could argue that the action against the miners in 84-85 was disproportionate. Everything else had been tried. And another danger for me is that one of the biggest foreign delegations for this Catalan farce came from parties from the United Kingdom. It came from the Tartan Army of SNP in Scotland, and it came from that terrorist apologising scum across the water in Ulster, Sinn Féin. They clearly believe that this could lead to a domino effect that could trigger separatist causes here in our own country, and that is something that's got to be resisted at all costs.
Well, Andrew, I have never felt any feeling towards the Catalan separatist movement at all. I've never really fully understood it. I've obviously seen what Basque separatism has done in the other part of northern Spain over the years, but I've never had any strong feeling about it at all. But I have to say, since last Sunday, I begin to have a bit of sympathy with the Catalan separatists. And I put it to you, Andrew, that the way the police behaved, the fact that the EU won't condemn it, in fact support it, is likely to drive more people towards separatist feelings.
That's possibly the case, though I never take a teleological view on all this. There's nothing inevitable about Catalan independence.
Sure.
But I do think that some of the tactics, from what we've seen in our highly slanted and biased media, was disproportionate. But the media obviously hasn't been covering a lot of the attacks against moderate Spanish institutions by Catalans over the last goodness knows how many years.
Yeah, no, I'm sure. Listen, I'm sure there's been fault on that side, and I'm sure that calling this referendum, knowing it wasn't sanctioned by national government, was a provocative act. but goodness me, I think they couldn't believe, the separatists in some ways couldn't believe their luck when the Spanish government overreacted the way that it did. Andrew, I thank you. Now, we will go back to Theo Usherwood, but we're having a bit of trouble with signal. It all sounded rather dramatic, didn't it? Adam is in New Denham. Adam, good morning.
Hello there, Nigel.
So am I right in thinking, Adam, that the police overreacted hugely last week, and that will drive more people into the arms of separation?
Oh, it's the best publicity the Catalan movement could ever want. Now, if you take, I'd like to just draw a parallel here, and also I'd like to put in my reason for why the Catalans have gone for independence now, which you may be interested. But first, let me just draw a parallel with Northern Ireland. We were able to hold a peace deal, a negotiation with people who have been bombing and killing and carrying out terrorist activities for over 40 years. We were able to do that. I mean, as much as I despise Blair, I think we've come out with a good deal from the Northern Ireland Agreement.
OK, so why... So Adam, tell me, why now for the Catalan separatists? Why now?
Catalonia has always produced more GDP for Spain than it's actually used. Up until a few years ago, they always received back a rebate to actually say, you've actually produced more for the economy than you've used. They had that rebate cut. Just like Slovenia in the Yugoslavia breakup, they're thinking, well, hang about, we're producing a lot, we're not getting it back, we are supporting other areas of Spain, why are we working and producing more than other people use? It sounds a bit like the EU, doesn't it?
Yeah. You think money's at the heart of this, yeah?
Always. Politics goes out the window when it comes down to people's finances and whether they think they're having a mickey taken.
You may be right, Adam, but there's also some history going back centuries of Catalans being crushed once or twice, etc. I thank you for your call. Don't forget, I'm going to reveal soon why Hillary Clinton hates me as much as she does. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's 11:15. So hundreds of people are gathering in central Barcelona, and they're rallying and they're protesting against the Catalan government's desire for independence and perhaps an announcement that will come on Tuesday. So there are, as our first caller said, two sides to this debate. Important to know that and to remember that separatism for Catalonia has always been in the minority. But my feeling is the actions of the Spanish police last week, and indeed the European Union in backing them up, will drive more people into the arms of the separatist movement. Philip says to me by text, there is no excuse for what happened in Spain. And Philip, I think that just about sums the whole thing up. Gary's been doing some thinking on Twitter. He says, the Prime Minister should announce that post-Brexit, the UK will look to form close links with an independent Catalonia, incentivising UK tourists to go there in preference to the rest of Spain. Play the EU at their own game. Promote division and conquer. All right, Gary, that's quite a lot to think about. Robin is calling from Herne Hill. Robin, hello.
Hello, Nigel.
So, what did you think of what the police did last Sunday, Robin?
Well, I thought it was a back to the future type of thing that Spain has always looked on that part of Catalonia as troublemakers because of even when George Orwell was over there. And in some ways it's good news for us because people can see what the European Union is really like.
Do you know what? That's what I think too. Yeah.
And I'm by no means right-wing because I think that certain things like energy should be capped. But anyway, that's another situation. But I'm stunned that no media lovies or the left have come out and condemned this. I mean, somebody like Tony Benn or Eric Heffer or Michael Foot would have done.
Yes, they absolutely would have done. Robin, you're right. But of course, now the political class and nearly all of the Parliamentary Labour Party are all EU fanatics. They love it. And the reason people don't want to talk about it is the threat of Catalonia breaking away is a much bigger threat to the European Union. It makes Brexit look like a Sunday afternoon picnic. So they're terrified of it and they want it simply to go away. And Robin, the odds are, or certainly before last Sunday, that Catalan separatism was a clear minority. And yet I just wonder whether the events of last week would have changed that and made more people think, do you know what, to hell with Madrid, to hell with Brussels, we're a wealthy little region, we'll become a country and go it on our own.
Yeah, also, the terrorist attack, they did act as one. But even then, the Prime Minister was booed by some people in Catalan, and I'm amazed that the left's lining up with Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan to stay in the EU.
Robin, I don't get it. I see Bob Geldof occasionally leading protests in London, 25,000 young left-wing protesters, all on the side of Goldman Sachs. I can't work it out either. Robin, I thank you. Now, we're going to Maidenhead and Nemesio. Is that the right pronunciation?
Yes, that's right, yes.
Good morning.
Good morning, Nigel.
So, come on, tell me, have I got this right or wrong?
No, wrong.
Wrong, okay.
You're not giving the balanced view. You are just seems to be on the side of the separatists, right?
Well, can I just say very quickly, and I'll give you the floor, can I just say that I'm not on the side of the separatists. I've never had any feeling for the Catalan separatists, but I do genuinely think that what happened last week was outrageous, and it says a lot about Spain and the European Union that people can defend that kind of behaviour. It would have been much cleverer to allow the referendum to go ahead, to say to people who want Spain to stay united, just boycott it, don't bother to turn up, don't give it legitimacy. And I just feel, Nemesio, that by acting the way they have, that more people will be driven towards it. So I'm not taking sides, but Nemesio, you're on LBC, you're Spanish, you feel strongly about it. Tell me how you see it.
Well, I watch every night I watch the Spanish news. There's a channel called 24 Hours. Mm-hmm. 24 Hours from RTV, and then the 24-hour news, okay?
Yep.
And every weekday, at about 9 o'clock English time, they have a discussion on political things. And they are, the people that discuss in this program are top journalists from the top newspapers in Spain. And they give the facts. I don't know if you know that how many people were taken to hospital? 4 people.
900 injured.
This is their story.
Yeah.
Some lady bandaged the wrong hand, and they show it to the camera. You know, the voting boxes were translucent. You couldn't see what's inside until they already had votes in it when they were taken to the stations. Some voted in the street. Some people voted 4 times. This is documented. Okay? And another thing I want to say is about the indoctrination of the children in the schools. Okay? Children of 5 years old are taught by the parents and taken in front of the Spanish police, which are the Spanish police, okay? Police of Spain, and call them son of a bitch, bastards, 5-year-olds. Do you think this is correct?
No, I don't. And often separatist movements do have some really, really unpleasant sides to them. Of that, there is no doubt at all. Look, whatever you say about those that went to hospital or didn't, the fact is, I think it's difficult to deny that the Spanish government's reaction was very heavy-handed in trying to stop a vote taking place. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree that the image they gave is horrible.
Yes.
Terrible.
And they and haven't they, because of the way they behaved and the images and the global reaction, albeit not from our friends in Brussels, but the general global reaction, they have actually made. You see, we had this, Nemesio, just over 100 years ago. We had a rebellion, an uprising in Dublin from an Irish separatist movement who were very much in the minority, right? British reaction was to send the Navy up the River Liffey, start shelling parts of Dublin, round up the ringleaders, shoot them, and in doing that, we actually turned the argument the other way, and more people embraced Irish nationalism. And I just think that more people are going to embrace Catalan separatism because of that behaviour last week.
Another thing I would just quickly is the LBC. Last Thursday, you had a person from the left party in Catalonia.
Yes.
I tried to ring you on Thursday, but I couldn't get through.
Okay.
And then yesterday, some other show, they had somebody from also from the separatist group. Can we get somebody from the government side.
Yeah,
In the radio,
okay, right. In defence of LBC and myself, that is why Theo Usherwood right now is in the centre of Barcelona with that march that is going on, and that march are people who want Spain to stay united. So, Nemesio, thank you for your call. You know, if we do get things wrong, if we get the balance wrong, we should know. But that is why Theo Usherwood is there, to make sure that we do represent both sides of this story. Camillo is my next caller from Bounds Green. Good morning.
Good morning, Nigel.
Good morning. So you're Spanish, are you?
Yes, I am indeed.
Okay, and how do you feel about the images that were beamed around the world from Barcelona last Sunday?
I'll tell you how I feel, but first of all, I would like to tell you something else. You shouldn't use the problems in Spain, in Catalonia, to attack the EU. It's two different things, two separate things, and you are mixing them up. Because every time the subject comes, you say the EU should have said, done something. What happened in Catalonia last Sunday was awful. Unfortunately, I have been predicting it for a long time that was going to happen, because precisely that's what the Catalan government wanted. They wanted it because they had no support anywhere, and they wanted the pictures to be seen everywhere. They got what they wanted. The Spanish police weren't taking away people that were voting. They weren't on the queue to vote. They were barricading against the police, so the police couldn't take away the polling boxes. They want the polling boxes, something that the Catalan police, Spain's a democracy, if not, that wouldn't have happened, you know. Catalan police should have closed those polling stations. That was an order coming from the judge. It wasn't Spanish government decision.
No, but people are allowed...
An order coming from the judge.
But you can't stop people.
People are allowed to vote, Nigel.
Yes, of course they are.
But depends what for. The Catalan government are saying this is a vote for independence. Unfortunately, in the Spanish constitution, unless they go to the Senate and they decide and they vote that they can vote for a referendum, that has to be changed for the proper channel. Imagine that the mayor of London decides, because London doesn't need UK, it's wealthy, because this is all about money. It is all about money, yes. If the mayor of London says, okay, we want to break out from the United Kingdom, we are going to vote in London. They have a vote in London, and the majority votes to break away from the United Kingdom.
Yeah, but you see, it wouldn't, Camillo, because what would happen is the British government, for once, would get something right, and they would say, right, these ballot boxes that are being set up next Sunday in schools and wherever around London, this is a completely illegitimate referendum. Our advice is you boycott the whole thing and show it up to be a farce. What the Spanish government did was the opposite. Camillo, I thank you for your call and for your passion, and it is worth remembering, you know, a huge number of people do not want Spain to be broken up. I just think the government has pushed people a little bit closer to it. I will, of course, in a minute also tell you why Hillary Clinton really, really hates me. Right now, you're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. It's 11:30. In today's Sunday Times magazine, there is a photograph on the front of Hillary Clinton, and she's in London. She's been interviewed at some length by Christina Lamb of the Sunday Times, and she's here because she's got a book. She's launching a book. It's called What Happened, and it's why she didn't become the President of the United States of America. And none of it's her fault. Absolutely. In fact, she's never, ever got anything wrong in her entire life. It's because of horrible, awful, vile people. People who were behind Brexit, that then dared to get themselves involved in the American elections. She speaks of Farage with disgust. He came to the US to campaign for Trump and spent half of his remarks insulting me in a very personal way and talking about Trump as an alpha male, the silverback gorilla. I think of those images and what that says about what is acceptable and what's not. So I'm not acceptable. I'm looking forward, actually, to reading a bit more of the book. The book is available. It's on sale for £20, published by Simon & Schuster. It's called What Happened, but perhaps should be renamed The Great Big Whinge. So there. Now, earlier on, we were talking to Theo Usherwood, who was amidst hundreds of people in the square in Barcelona. We were doing well for a little bit, then the line went, and I am hoping that Theo, LBC's political editor, is on the phone right now.
I'm back, Nigel. The demonstration is still going on. Tens of thousands of campaigners, demonstrators affiliated in some form with the Spanish People's Party, that's Manuel Rajoy's party in Madrid, here in Spain to try and keep Catalonia part of Spain. Now, we saw the ugly scenes last week when the referendum took place. It was deemed illegitimate, it was deemed illegal. Riot police, heavily clad in black armour, burst in, dragging women by their hair, beating elderly people up to try and stop that taking place. Today in central Barcelona, a very different atmosphere. The police are standing with their arms folded, eating donuts, smoking cigarettes, very, very relaxed, because of course they don't. This is their demonstration. This is Madrid's demonstration to try and persuade Catalonia to remain part of Spain. And I've been speaking to a few people in the crowd about why they're here and why they want unity rather than to allow, as they term it, the separatists to win.
We're all very afraid of what the Catalan government is doing. Basically, they are bringing us to the ruin. They're ruining this country, you know?
Why now?
Companies are leaving the region. Everybody's very, very afraid. You know, this can be a disaster for Catalonia, economically and socially. You know, half of the country is against the other half. It's a disaster.
It feels a little bit like civil war.
Not without the war, but at least their families are fighting, friends are fighting. It's a total disaster, both socially and economically.
But why are they doing it?
Some of them are fanatics, and some of them want to do it out of their own economic interests, you know? This is a very corrupt government.
Madam, why is it important Spain stays together?
It's important because we are together, we are going to be better, and we are going to be like the last 40 years. We are trying to fight for the democracy, and we are trying to stop separatism. We want to be together, and we are going to stay better together.
Do you think there'll be violence this week? Do you think the separatists will get their way? Will the separatists win?
I don't think so. We are more, and we are all together. We are now here today to stop separatism, and I think we are going to win them. And we all of us have one heart, and we are Catalan and Spanish also. So I think we are going to win. We are more.
There's a lot of pro-EU flags here. There's a lot of European Union flags here.
Yes. We want to be European again. We are not going to permit this situation, and we want to be Spanish, and we are going to be Catalan, and we want to be from Europe. That we are going to be fighting for the last 40 years. So
why are you here?
Okay, because I'm a little bit disappointed with the Catalan separatist politicians, because they are lying to us so many times, and from long time, from 30 years already, almost, because they have, you know, the education, they teach the children as changing the history, changing a lot of things, saying to the citizens that the rest of the state of Spain is stealing them because they afford more taxes than they receive in investments. But this is not such a huge hole. It's not so much there. I mean, they're doing so many crazy statements that are not true, and then the people. A lot of people believe them, and then they want to separate. They say, no, we don't want to belong to...
The Catalonia gets less taxes than they create.
The Catalan community is region, it has a lot of industry, a lot of tourism, a lot of businesses, and then it's rich. It's rich in the sense of creating value. And then they pay the taxes as the rest of the Spanish people, and then they get back from the state amounts on investments and so other kind of. And it's true, the richest parts are the ones that afford more than the poorest. No, they receive the poorest, but it's redistribution of the richness. So it's not. I think it's not a problem. I think.
No. Do you think that today Spain is trying to say to Catalonia, we love you, we want you to stay.
Yeah, of course. All these people is here because they want to continue to being together.
Remarkable. Theo, are you still there?
Still here?
Yeah, remarkable how some of those arguments, they were echoes of what we heard used in our referendum in this country about Britain and the European Union. Just there's a lot more passion there and people out on the streets in their numbers. Is there any indication, Theo, as to what is going to happen in the Catalan Parliament on Tuesday afternoon?
The Catalan Parliament was due to meet on Monday, and
yeah.
You're quite right to pick up on that.
Yeah.
That session has now been suspended by the government in Madrid. Carles Puigdemont, the president of Catalonia, is then due to address the Parliament here in Barcelona on Tuesday, and it's a little bit unclear as to how far he's going to go. He's under pressure from his own side, Nigel, to use the referendum result, the overwhelming referendum result, to leave the rest of Spain as the moment to declare independence. Today's demonstration and what we saw yesterday, both here in Barcelona and in Madrid, was actually pressure being put on him from the other side to try and row back, to try and find a way of starting a dialogue. But this is a region, Nigel, this goes back to 1975 and the fall of General Franco. This is a region that has had its language suppressed, its culture suppressed, and then over the years it's been able to get that back. And what's happened is, and the woman hit on it there, is that this is the richest part of Spain because of tourism, because of industry. It generates a huge amount of taxes which goes into the coffers of Madrid, and then what they get back in terms of bursaries, grants, direct funding from Madrid is a lot less than that, and that's created a resentment.
Same arguments.
Government here. Same arguments.
Same arguments as we had in the referendum.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's created the resentment, Nigel, that they want to say, well, hang on a moment, we could be better off out on our own, with our own economy, with our own culture, and we don't need Madrid.
Theo, thanks ever so much, and keep us in touch in the next couple of days. There is the possibility of some very dramatic events. We did actually get a slight softening from the Spanish government yesterday, where they virtually apologised for some of the things that had happened last Sunday. So there has been in the last 24 hours a slight de-escalation of the language, but this will be a very dramatic speech by the Catalan president that takes place on Tuesday. Dave is calling me from Colsden in Surrey. Dave, what do you make of the pro-Spain march today?
Hello, Nigel. Well, it's very important, and it's very important for us. And I want to bring something out that you've highlighted, but you haven't totally exposed.
Okay.
And that is, what are the powers of the police when they are under assault from the public? I mean, in England, we've seen many times people in balaclavas marching, smashing things up. And the media are able to show a policeman with a baton who has been under attack. Now, that policeman could be your son or your father, your uncle, and they are being goaded by a mob with things chucked at them.
Yes.
And all of the political debate is able to change on one photograph. We've seen it so often, the worst type of media manipulation. Do we want the rule of law or not? And what should be done about it? What's done to protect our policemen in this country and in Spain?
Dave, I do understand what you say, that one photograph can change our perception of an entire event. You're absolutely right to point that out. However, there wasn't much goading going on when there were people in their late 70s queuing up to vote last Sunday and were forcibly knocked to the ground and dragged away. Like you, I'm always sceptical about any story and how it's portrayed. I have to say, I believe the accounts that I've listened to and that I've read of innocent people going to vote being subjected to violence.
Nigel, I'm not disputing one thing you did say, which was the 1916 Easter Rising was a brilliant analogy, the way that there is and all to the whole debate.
Yeah.
But we've got to have a more grown-up conversation about this Catalonia situation. This Catalonia situation is almost an insurgency by a minority, and we've got to think about what that means. The media seem to be granting them victim status before we've started in every area, even beyond the propaganda debate. They are a minority. People in Catalonia as a majority do not want to leave. What does this mean for the SNP? Are they next?
Well, Dave, everything you say there is absolutely right, or it was right until last Sunday. I just think, and that's the reason I use the Irish analogy, I just think that the way they've behaved will drive more people in that direction. Dave, thank you for your call. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's 11:46. Well, both sides of this debate about Catalonia are being put clearly on LBC, and in fact, I think we've got Theo Usherwood there on the ground, and he'll be there over the course of the next couple of days. You know, you'll hear it here first on LBC. Now, my next caller is ringing from South Korea, from Seoul, and it's Zabi. Good. What time of the day is it there?
Hello there. It's evening. It's 10 to 8 in the evening, so almost night here.
Well, good evening, and you were put through it. I'm told that you are Catalan, but now living in South Korea.
Yeah.
So tell me.
Yeah, I'm from Barcelona. I'm currently living there, and I've been listening to some of the calls that you've been having for the last half an hour or so.
Yep.
And I'd like to point out some things that I don't see I don't understand that, because they keep on saying that Catalan people that want to leave Spain are a minority, and they are not a minority. If you look at the parliament, they are the majority, in fact. So that's the first thing that I don't understand. Then the other thing, I heard somebody saying that companies are leaving Catalonia, and maybe you have read that some of the banks are like changing their address or something like that. Well, that's only a change of address. It's nothing to be worried about. They are not leaving the country. They are not leaving Barcelona. I mean, we still have the banks, we still have the workers. So there's nothing there. It's just. I think you understand that. It's just kind of a fear. You know, it's putting fear into people. So because at the end, what they don't want to talk about is letting people decide what they want to do. I mean, at the end, it's just that problem, and Spain is having that problem, not listening to people, and just saying lies and then bullshit at the end. So
well, let me just, Zabi, let me just pick up on 2 points. Firstly, you know, the last polling that I saw said that in a referendum, about 41% would vote for separation, which is up from 15% 20 years ago. So the last polling we saw suggested that it was a minority, but that may have changed after last Sunday. Your point about the banks and businesses is fascinating. So before last Sunday, this was never an argument that was heard. Now, the prospect that Catalonia may secede has led to the banks saying they would leave, and it's actually almost a rerun of the arguments that we had in the British referendum. But Zabi, let me ask you, if you were back in Barcelona, or if there was a defining referendum, would you yourself vote for Catalan independence?
I would. Nowadays I would. Yes, of course. Yes. Because, and I think it meet a lot of people that they would vote against that independence like 15 days ago, but now they are... That's
exactly what I think. And how would you... Just let me ask you this one last question if I can. So, Catalonia, if it were to secede in that referendum, would you think it's important for Catalonia to join the European Union, or wouldn't that worry you? Would independence be what you'd be going for?
No, I wouldn't be worried at all. I mean, there are some streets that we could, add to that street. I mean, we could get into those streets for commerce and for these kind of things. But the European Union is just a club for partners. I mean, there's the partners club with countries doing whatever they want, and they don't care about anything else. So if you are in, you're good, and if you're out, you're the same, but out. I mean, you can live outside the European Union, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Thank you, Zabi. Interesting. So I'm hearing Eurosceptic arguments being made by Spaniards, things that I'm told I was an awful person for suggesting that countries could survive outside. There we are. John in Glasgow, good morning.
Good morning. The actions of the Catalan government have definitely inflamed and aggravated the situation. It's been provocative, but the Spanish government themselves have deepened the crisis with their ham-fisted, heavy-handed approach, and undoubtedly alienated a lot of people and driven a great many more people in short term into the hands of the Catalan nationalists. But the question really here, Nigel, is where all this comes from. It comes mainly from the European Union, their idea of weakening nation-states, this almost regionalisation.
I know.
Tony Blair, it's almost become like the Scottish regional government, the Welsh regional government, and all that's happened with this devolution in the last 20 years is they've provided a platform which people like the Catalan nationalists, like the Scottish nationalists, have taken over as their own platform. And I would remind a lot of people that as recently as 3 or 4 months ago, Nicola Sturgeon was even threatening in the same kind of provocative, inflammatory way to hold a second referendum here in Scotland, regardless of what anybody else in the UK thought.
Yeah, no, absolutely. John, do you know what? We debated this in Strasbourg at some length last week because, as you say, one of the great aims of the European Union has been to regionalise countries, the sort of old-fashioned divide and conquer, take away people's feeling for a nation, replace that with its feeling for, its own region, its own identity, but within a European framework. And funny enough, Tony Benn predicted this in the 1975 referendum. Benn said that what will happen is they will gradually try to break up the United Kingdom through grant money, etc., etc. But John, in the past, I mean, for example, Sinn Féin. You know, the European Commission love Sinn Féin. They're fantastic now because Sinn Féin want to do more damage to the United Kingdom, but be absolutely committed as supporters of the EU. What they're terrified of, John, is this Catalan independence movement is something different. It's actually quite a strong cultural thing, and what they're terrified of, they're terrified that the Catalans stick two fingers up to Madrid and to Brussels, and they see that as the beginning of the end of the entire European project. So that's my take on it, John. Would you agree with that?
Well, I do agree with many parts of that, but it's inflammatory, and the European Union, they've trying to have it both ways here.
Yes.
I mean, in the wake of our referendum result last year to leave the European Union, they rolled out the red carpet for Nicola Sturgeon for their own purposes. She is not their negotiating partner, and she has similar agendas to people like the Catalan government. We've had seen the police up here unified. It started off as a Scottish executive when the revolution started. They anointed themselves then as a Scottish government.
Yeah.
And so it moves on. They now want to do away with British Transport Police, but they're now reaping
but can you imagine, John?
The backdraft from all of this.
Can you imagine, John? I mean, those louts that supported Scottish separation, that assaulted me in the street in Glasgow. Can you imagine if the British police went and roughed them up? I mean, the first people to condemn it all would have been the European Union. And in this case, not a dicky bird. John, I thank you very much indeed for your call. I've no idea what will happen on Tuesday. I've no idea whether the Catalan president will go through with this full push for independence or not. What I am certain of is the behaviour of the Spanish police and its support from Brussels and the European Commission actually has done the separatist cause one whole lot of good. You've been listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show on LBC. I'm back tomorrow evening from 7. Coming up at 3, it's Alex Salmond. But up next, it's Majid Nawaz.